I never planned to eavesdrop on my daughter-in-law that evening, but those words froze my blood. I only married him for his father's millions. Standing outside their guest bathroom, I clutched the wall for support. My son Andrew had married a predator. Jessica continued, unaware. Once the old man transfers the company, I'll be set for life. My hand trembled, heart hammering against my ribs. 26 years building my company, my legacy. All for my son, all now threatened by her calculated deception. At 65, I had reached what most would call the pinnacle of success. Westbrook Industrial Solutions, the company I built from nothing after losing my wife Sarah to cancer when Andrew was just 10, was now valued at over $5 million. Through those early years, it was just Andrew and me against the world. While I poured everything into growing the business, I made sure to never miss his baseball games or science fairs. We became a team, father and son navigating life together. The company grew beyond my wildest expectations. Starting with just myself and 2 employees in a tiny office space, we expanded to over 50 employees specializing in industrial automation solutions. Our clients included some of the biggest manufacturing plants across the eastern seaboard. All those late nights, the missed vacations, the constant stress of meeting payrolls during lean times had finally paid off. I had created something of value, something I could proudly pass to my son. Andrew grew into a remarkable young man. He excelled in engineering at Georgia Tech and joined the company 4 years ago. His innovative thinking brought fresh perspectives to our operations, and our profits increased by 30% under his management of the technical division. I had been gradually preparing him to take over the entire operation when I retired. The succession plan was clear to everyone in the company. Andrew would inherit everything I built. Then Jessica entered our lives. Andrew met her at a charity gala that one of our biggest clients had organized. I remember the first time he brought her to Sunday dinner at my house. She was undeniably beautiful with her long auburn hair and warm smile that seemed to light up the room. Jessica worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative, or so she claimed. She spoke eloquently about her career aspirations and seemed genuinely interested in our family business. "Your son is absolutely brilliant, Max," she told me that first evening, touching my arm affectionately. "The way he talks about the innovations he wants to bring to Westbrook makes me realize how special he is." I was charmed. After losing Sarah so many years ago, I had worried Andrew might never find someone who would love him the way he deserved. Jessica seemed perfect. Smart, career-driven, supportive, and the way she looked at him gave me hope that my son had found his partner in life. Their courtship was brief, but seemingly passionate. Within 6 months, Andrew proposed with an engagement ring that cost him 3 months of his salary. The wedding followed 4 months later, a lavish affair at the Grand Williston Hotel downtown. I spared no expense. Andrew was my only child, and I wanted his special day to be perfect. During the father-son dance at the reception, Andrew hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Dad, for everything," he whispered. "I never thought I could be this happy." I believed him. I believed in them. The future looked brighter than ever. My retirement plan was set. I would gradually transfer ownership of Westbrook to Andrew over the next 2 years, culminating in my 70th birthday when I would hand over the final controlling shares. Everything was falling perfectly into place. The first small warning signs appeared so subtly that I dismissed them. Jessica seemed excessively interested in the details of the company transfer. During family dinners, she would steer conversations toward the timeline for my retirement. Initially, I found her interest endearing, assuming she was simply concerned about her husband's future. "The succession plan is all worked out with the lawyers," I assured them both during one such conversation. "Everything will be transferred systematically to minimize tax implications. By my 70th birthday, Andrew will own the entire company." I noticed how her eyes lit up at this information, but I interpreted it as excitement for her husband's future. Looking back, I should have recognized that calculating look for what it was. Then came the changes in Andrew. My son had always been careful with money, having watched me build our fortune through disciplined financial decisions. But shortly after the wedding, he began showing up in expensive new suits. Their modest starter home was suddenly under renovation, with Jessica hiring high-end interior designers. Andrew's practical sedan was traded for a luxury sports car. "Aren't you concerned about these expenses?" I asked him casually one day at the office. "Jessica says we should live like the successful people we are," he responded with a shrug. The business is doing great, and the future looks secure. Why not enjoy it a little? The twist that should have alarmed me most came during their one-year anniversary celebration. I had organized a small party at my home, inviting their close friends. While helping Jessica bring dessert plates from the kitchen, I overheard her on the phone in the pantry, door slightly ajar. "No, I need to stay focused," she whispered intensely. "You don't understand what's at stake here. $5 million, minimum, maybe more depending on how the business valuation goes. I just need to stick to the plan for another year." I froze, plates in hand, heart suddenly racing. "Of course I don't love him," she continued with a small, cruel laugh. "He's nice enough, but this was never about love. Once I secure the assets, everything changes. We can be together without hiding anymore." The plates nearly slipped from my hands. I managed to quietly back away, mind reeling from what I'd just heard. The perfect daughter-in-law I thought I knew had just revealed herself as something else entirely, a con artist who had targeted my son and my company. I barely slept that night. Jessica's words kept replaying in my mind. Of course I don't love him. How could I have been so blind? The signs had been there all along: her excessive interest in the company finances, the lavish spending, the subtle ways she had been isolating Andrew from his old friends. Over the next few days I watched them more carefully. Jessica's performance was flawless. She played the role of devoted wife convincingly enough that anyone would be fooled. The loving touches, the supportive comments, the way she seemed to hang on Andrew's every word, all a carefully orchestrated show. I invited them to dinner the following weekend, hoping to observe more closely. Andrew arrived first, explaining that Jessica would join us later after her pharmaceutical sales meeting. "How are things really going, son?" I asked, handing him a beer as we settled on the back porch. "Great, Dad. Work's good, home's good. Jessica's been pushing me to take on more responsibility at the company. She thinks I'm ready to lead the executive team meetings." "Does she now?" I tried to keep my tone neutral. "And what do you think?" Andrew hesitated. "I think maybe she's right. You're not getting any younger, Dad. Maybe we should accelerate the transition timeline?" The suggestion struck me like a physical blow. This wasn't Andrew speaking, these were Jessica's words coming from my son's mouth. "We have a carefully structured plan for a reason," I reminded him gently. "There are tax implications, training considerations, client relationships to transition properly. Rushing things could put the company at risk." A flash of something unfamiliar resentment perhaps crossed his face before quickly disappearing. "Jessica says you're being overcautious, that you don't fully trust me with your company." "My company? Andrew, everything I've built has always been for you. But there's wisdom in doing things properly." Our conversation was interrupted by Jessica's arrival. She swept in wearing an expensive new dress, kissing Andrew passionately before giving me a perfunctory hug. Throughout dinner she dominated the conversation, repeatedly bringing up how Andrew is ready for more responsibility and how some of the older management approaches might be holding the company back. After dinner, Andrew helped me clear the table while Jessica excused herself to make a phone call. I heard her voice drifting from the guest bedroom down the hall. Telling Andrew I needed to grab more wine from the cellar, I quietly moved closer to the bedroom door, which she'd left slightly ajar. The old man's being stubborn about the transition, I heard her say in a tone entirely different from her dinner table, voice cold, calculating. "But I'm working on Andrew. He's starting to push back just like we planned." I leaned closer, scarcely breathing. "Don't worry about the prenup, baby. It only activates if I'm the one filing for divorce. If Andrew files, I get half of everything, including whatever company shares he has by then. The more we can get transferred before anything happens, the better." My blood ran cold. Not only was she planning to take advantage of my son, but she had clearly done her legal homework. The prenuptial agreement I'd encouraged them to sign apparently had a loophole she was planning to exploit. "I miss you too," she continued, her voice softening. "But we need to be patient. Ted's investment group is ready to buy out the company as soon as I have control of Andrew's shares. $5 million is just the starting point. With the right buyer, we could be looking at 7 or 8. Ted? Who was Ted? And she was planning to sell the company. My life's work, the business I'd built to secure my family's future, was nothing but a cash grab to her. "I should go," she said. "I'll call you tomorrow from the office. Love you." I quickly retreated to the kitchen, mind spinning. Jessica had a secret boyfriend. They weren't just planning to divorce Andrew and take his money, they intended to liquidate the entire company. Dozens of loyal employees would lose their jobs. My son would lose both his inheritance and his marriage in one devastating blow. When they left that evening, Jessica hugged me with practiced affection. "We should do this more often, Max. You're such an important part of our lives." I hugged her back, maintaining my composure while inwardly recoiling at her touch. "Anytime, Jessica. Family is everything to me." As I watched their car pull away, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her yet. I wouldn't tell Andrew what I'd discovered, not without irrefutable proof. If I made accusations based solely on overheard phone calls, Jessica would simply deny everything. She might even convince Andrew that I was becoming paranoid or senile. No, I needed more information. I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. The next morning, I made a call to Frank Delaney, an old friend who ran a private investigation agency. We had attended college together decades ago, and his firm had occasionally done background checks for my company's executive hires. "Frank, I need your help with something personal. Complete discretion required." "Of course, Max. What do you need?" "I need a background check on my daughter-in-law, and I need surveillance on her activities, particularly when she claims to be at work." There was a momentary pause on the other end of the line. "This sounds serious, Max." "It is, Frank. I believe my son is in danger not physically, but in every other way that matters." "I understand. We'll start immediately." The twist that truly shook me came 3 days later. Frank called with his preliminary findings. "Max, I think you need to come to my office. There are things you should see in person." An hour later, I sat across from Frank as he opened a file folder. "Jessica Thompson, born Jessica Alden, has quite the history," Frank began, sliding several photographs across the desk. "She's been engaged 3 times before meeting your son. All 3 previous fiancés were wealthy men, significantly older than her. All 3 engagements ended abruptly." I examined the photos, newspaper clippings of Jessica, looking slightly different with varying hair colors and styles, alongside different men. "The pattern is consistent," Frank continued. "She works her way into wealthy circles, targets a man with significant assets, gets engaged, and then something happens. The first relationship ended when the man's family intervened with evidence of her previous aliases. The second man apparently discovered her cheating. The third is more interesting. She filed a sexual harassment claim against him, settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, and disappeared shortly after." My mouth went dry. "And now she's married to my son." "Yes, but the marriage is different from her previous pattern. We believe it's because of the scale of potential payoff. Your company represents significantly more wealth than her previous targets." "What about her job?" "She claims to be a pharmaceutical sales representative." Frank shook his head. "She was briefly employed by Palmer Pharmaceuticals 2 years ago, but was let go during a restructuring. She hasn't been employed anywhere since about 3 months before meeting Andrew." "And is there a Ted in the picture?" Frank looked surprised. "You know about Ted Garrison?" I overheard a phone conversation. "Who is he?" "Theodore Garrison runs a corporate acquisition group that specializes in buying family-owned businesses, stripping their assets, and reselling the parts. He's got a questionable reputation in business circles." Frank hesitated. "He also appears to be Jessica's romantic partner. Our surveillance photographed them meeting at a hotel downtown yesterday during what Jessica told Andrew was a sales conference." Frank handed me several photos, clearly showing Jessica and a well-dressed man in his 40s entering and leaving a hotel room, sharing an intimate kiss in the parking lot. "There's one more thing you should know, Max," Frank said gravely. "Jessica is in significant debt. She owes nearly $300,000 to various creditors, including $50,000 to a man with connections to some unsavory lending operations. These aren't people you want to owe money to." I sat back, the full picture becoming clearer. Jessica wasn't just after a comfortable divorce settlement. She was desperate for money, facing dangerous creditors, and had a partner waiting in the wings to help her dismantle everything I'd built. "What do you recommend I do with this information, Frank?" My old friend sighed. "That's the difficult part. If you confront her directly, she'll deny everything and potentially accelerate whatever she's planning. If you show this to Andrew, you risk him not believing it, or worse, telling her about it, which could put our investigation at risk. So I need more," I said firmly. "I need evidence so compelling that Andrew can't possibly deny the truth." Frank nodded. "We'll keep digging. In the meantime, be careful, Max. people in desperate financial situations can be dangerous. As I drove home, I realized that the situation was far worse than I had initially feared. This wasn't just about protecting my company or my son's inheritance. This was about saving Andrew from a predator who had targeted him specifically for his access to wealth. A woman who was sleeping with another man while plotting my son's financial and emotional destruction. For the first time since Sarah died, I felt truly afraid for our family's future. The next few weeks were among the most difficult of my life. Maintaining a facade of normalcy while knowing what Jessica was planning took every ounce of self-control I possessed. Whenever we were together for family dinners or company events, I had to smile and engage with the woman who was systematically planning to destroy everything I held dear. Frank's investigation continued to uncover disturbing details about Jessica's past and present activities. Her real name was, indeed, Jessica Alden, but she had used at least 2 other aliases in the past. She had no college degree despite claiming to have graduated from Penn State. Her debt situation was even worse than initially discovered, with evidence of gambling problems and multiple maxed-out credit cards. Most concerning were her connections to Ted Garrison. Frank's team had documented 7 meetings between them over the course of 3 weeks, all during times when Jessica had told Andrew she was working. The surveillance photos showed clear romantic involvement, but also captured them reviewing documents that appeared to be related to Westbrook Industrial Solutions. They've been photographed with what looks like our company's financial statements and organizational charts, Frank told me during one of our regular updates. We believe they're identifying which parts of the company would be most valuable in a liquidation scenario. I felt physically ill. Have they approached any of our competitors or clients? Not yet, but we're monitoring communications. Garrison has a history of soliciting clients and employees from businesses before acquiring them, effectively undermining the business to lower the purchase price. Meanwhile, Andrew remained completely unaware, blinded by what he believed was love. If anything, he had become more distant from me, subtly pulling away as Jessica's influence grew stronger. "Dad, I think we should revisit the timeline for the company transition," Andrew said during a private meeting in my office one afternoon. "Jessica and I have been talking, and we believe delaying the full transfer until your 70th birthday is unnecessarily conservative." I studied my son's face, seeing in it both Sarah's gentle eyes and the determination that had always been his defining characteristic. How could I protect him without losing him? "Andrew, transferring a company of this size requires careful planning. The structured approach we've outlined with the lawyers maximizes the long-term benefits for everyone. But it's already my company too," he insisted with a hint of frustration. "I've been working here for 4 years. I know the operations inside and out. The employees respect me." "They do respect you," I agreed carefully. "And the company will be entirely yours on the timeline we've established. But there are aspects of running this business that take time to learn: the client relationships, the financial management, the strategic planning." Andrew's jaw tightened. "Jessica thinks you don't really intend to let go, that you'll keep finding reasons to delay the transfer." There it was again, Jessica's words coming from my son's mouth. I wanted to tell him everything then and there, but Frank's warning echoed in my mind. Without irrefutable proof, confronting the issue directly could backfire catastrophically. "Son, this company has always been for you. Every decision I've made has been with your future in mind. Please trust that I know what I'm doing." He left my office unsatisfied, and I knew the pressure would only increase. Jessica was getting impatient, perhaps because of her debt situation or pressure from Ted Garrison. I needed to accelerate my own plans. That evening, I received a particularly troubling call from Frank. "Max, we've intercepted some emails between Jessica and Garrison. They're planning to approach your operations manager, Jack Sullivan, with a job offer at significantly higher pay. The goal appears to be to extract insider information about your proprietary manufacturing processes." Jack had been with the company for 15 years. He knew every detail of our production methods, including the proprietary techniques that gave us an edge over competitors. "There's more," Frank continued. "We've discovered that Jessica has been accessing Andrew's personal computer, photographing documents, and forwarding financial information to Garrison. She's also been systematically transferring small amounts from Andrew's personal accounts to a separate account in her name over the past several months. The total is approaching $70,000. I gripped the phone tighter. "That's theft." "It is. And we have the documentation to prove it. But there's something else you should know. Jessica has been subtly suggesting to Andrew that you might be experiencing early cognitive decline. She's planted the idea with several family friends as well. The calculated cruelty of this strategy stunned me. She was laying groundwork to discredit anything I might say against her. "Max," Frank said solemnly, "there's one more development. Jessica has convinced Andrew to sign papers giving her power of attorney in case of his incapacitation. We believe this is part of a longer-term strategy, but it represents a serious escalation." After hanging up, I sat in my study for hours, turning the situation over in my mind. Jessica's plan was moving faster than I had anticipated. She wasn't just after Andrew's inheritance, she was actively stealing from him already and positioning herself to take control if anything happened to him. The implications were terrifying. The twist that truly shook me came the following day. Frank called me directly from his surveillance position. "Max, Jessica just met with a doctor at Westview Medical Center. Dr. Raymond Lewis specializes in neurological disorders, particularly early-onset dementia. She brought what appeared to be medical records with her." A chill ran through me. "Andrew's records?" "We believe so. Our team is trying to determine if she's somehow falsifying medical information." "Dear God," I whispered. The implications were clear and horrifying. Jessica wasn't just planning financial theft, she might be laying groundwork for something that could endanger my son's health or freedom. That night, I could barely sleep. The woman living with my son, sharing his bed, was systematically planning his destruction while sleeping with another man. She had stolen from him, was actively undermining his relationship with me, and now appeared to be creating some kind of medical fraud scenario. The depths of her deception seemed bottomless. My pain turned to resolute determination. I would not allow this predator to destroy my son or the legacy I had built for him. If Jessica wanted a battle of wits and resources, she had chosen the wrong opponent. The time for passive observation was over. I needed to act decisively to protect everything that mattered. The following week brought new challenges and painful realizations. Andrew stopped by my house unannounced one evening, something he hadn't done in months. His expression was troubled as he settled into the leather armchair that had always been his favorite spot in my living room. "Dad, I'm worried about you," he began, voice heavy with rehearsed concern. "You've been forgetting important details in meeting. The Henderson contract specifications, the new production targets. Jessica noticed it too when you couldn't remember her mother's name at dinner last week." I stared at my son, momentarily speechless. I had never met Jessica's mother. She had told us both that her parents were deceased, another lie according to Frank's investigation. The calculated nature of this approach chilled me to the bone. "Andrew," I said carefully, "I haven't been forgetting anything. The Henderson contract modifications were implemented exactly as discussed. As for Jessica's mother, she told us both that her parents passed away years ago." My son frowned, confusion crossing his face. "No, remember? She showed us pictures of her visit to Cleveland last month. Her mother has the garden with the prize-winning roses." Another fabrication. According to Frank's surveillance, Jessica had spent that supposed Cleveland weekend at a lakeside cabin with Ted Garrison. "Son, I think there might be some misunderstandings happening," I said gently. "I've been running this company successfully for 26 years. My mind is as sharp as ever." Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "Jessica thinks we should get you checked out by a specialist, just to be safe. Dr. Lewis is supposed to be excellent with memory issues in older adults." Dr. Lewis, the same neurologist Jessica had visited with what might have been falsified medical records. The trap was becoming clearer. If I refused the evaluation, it would seem like denial. If I went, who knew what kind of scenario Jessica might have arranged with the doctor? "I appreciate the concern," I said evenly, "but I had my annual physical just 2 months ago. Dr. Brennan gave me a clean bill of health, including cognitive function. Would you be willing to see Dr. Lewis as well, for my peace of mind?" Andrew pressed, clearly reciting Jessica's script. "I'll consider it," I replied, buying time. "In the meantime, I think we should discuss the company transition again. You mentioned wanting to accelerate the timeline." Andrew's expression brightened, taking the bait. "Yes, Jessica and I have been talking. We think the gradual transfer is unnecessarily complicated. A single transaction would be cleaner." "That's an interesting perspective," I said, watching him carefully. "Have you discussed this with our corporate attorney?" "Not yet, but Jessica's friend is a business lawyer. He thinks the current arrangement is outdated." Jessica's friend was almost certainly Ted Garrison or someone connected to him. The pieces were fitting together in a disturbing pattern. Later that night, I called Frank to update him on the conversation. "They're making their move," Frank confirmed. "We've intercepted emails between Jessica and Garrison discussing a medical strategy. There's also evidence they've been in contact with Dr. Lewis, though we haven't confirmed the nature of their relationship yet. What do you recommend? We have enough evidence of financial impropriety to confront her, but it might be better to let this play out a bit further. The more rope we give her, the more thoroughly she'll hang herself," I finished grimly. "But how much more damage can she do to Andrew in the meantime?" "That's the difficult balance," Frank admitted. "We should accelerate our investigation into Dr. Lewis. If there's medical fraud being planned, we need to document it thoroughly." The situation escalated further when Andrew and Jessica announced they were considering relocating to Colorado. "There's an amazing opportunity for me with a pharmaceutical startup in Boulder," Jessica explained during Sunday dinner at my home, "and Andrew could manage the western expansion of Westbrook from there. It would be perfect timing once the company transfer is complete." The real meaning was clear. She wanted to physically separate Andrew from me, eliminating my influence and making it easier to manipulate him. Boulder was also conveniently close to where Ted Garrison maintained his main office, according to Frank's investigation. "That sounds like a significant change," I responded neutrally. "Andrew, have we discussed Western expansion in the executive meetings?" My son looked momentarily uncomfortable. "Not officially, but I've been researching the market. There's untapped potential there." Jessica quickly interjected, "The important thing is that we'd be establishing our own path, making our own decisions without constant oversight." She gave me a pointed look that Andrew couldn't see. The implied message was unmistakable. She was accelerating her timeline and wanted me out of the picture entirely. The twist that truly changed everything came 3 days later. Frank called me at midnight, his voice urgent. "Max, we've got a serious development. Jessica met with her creditor today, the one with criminal connections. Our audio surveillance picked up threats being made against her if she doesn't pay back the $50,000 within 30 days. More importantly, she told him she'd have the money soon because she's accelerating the timetable." My blood ran cold. "What exactly does that mean?" "We're not certain, but combined with the medical angle they've been pursuing, it's concerning. I think Jessica may be planning something more immediate than waiting for the company transfer. She's desperate for cash now." "What are you suggesting, Frank?" There was a heavy pause. "I think you should consider talking to Andrew immediately. The situation may have escalated beyond our original timeline." That night, I faced the most difficult decision of my life. If I approached Andrew with incomplete evidence, Jessica would likely paint me as confused and desperate to maintain control. She had been systematically undermining my credibility for months. On the other hand, waiting too long might put my son at even greater risk. The following morning, I discovered that Andrew had scheduled a meeting with our corporate attorney without informing me. When confronted, he seemed uncomfortable but determined. "Jessica and I have decided it's time to review the succession plan. We want to discuss options for an immediate transfer of controlling interest." "Andrew, why the sudden urgency?" I asked, maintaining my composure despite my alarm. He hesitated, then said, "We've been offered an opportunity to invest in a promising venture, but it requires significant capital soon. Having clear control of the company would help secure the financing." This was new and concerning information. "What kind of venture?" "A medical technology startup. Jessica's connections in the pharmaceutical industry have given us inside information on a breakthrough technology. I would bet my entire company that this opportunity was fabricated by Ted Garrison to create urgency. They were likely planning to extract capital from Westbrook immediately after gaining control. Son, any investment of that magnitude should be discussed with our financial advisors and the executive team. That's standard procedure." Andrew's expression hardened. "Dad, this is exactly the problem. You say the company will be mine, but you treat every decision as if it requires your approval." Jessica's right, it's time for a clean break. The mention of a clean break sent warning bells ringing through my mind. Jessica was convincing my son to completely separate from me both personally and professionally. Once isolated, he would be even more vulnerable to their manipulation. That evening, I received the most disturbing call yet from Frank. "Max, We've obtained Jessica's complete phone records. There are multiple calls to and from Dr. Lewis over the past month. More concerning is a series of calls to a private detective agency specializing in asset searches and financial investigations. They're digging into your personal finances beyond what's publicly available about Westbrook. What are they looking for? Based on intercepted emails, they're trying to locate any offshore accounts or hidden assets that wouldn't be included in the company transfer. Jessica doesn't believe the company is your only significant asset. I frowned. I don't have offshore accounts or hidden assets. No, but she doesn't know that. She's convinced you've been hiding the true extent of your wealth. This may explain the accelerated timeline if she believes there's more money to be found. After hanging up, I sat in my study contemplating my options. The situation had evolved beyond a simple case of a gold-digging spouse. Jessica was actively involved with another man, had stolen from my son, was isolating him from family and friends, and now appeared to be investigating my finances while possibly fabricating medical issues. The stakes couldn't be higher. If I confronted Andrew with insufficient evidence, I might lose him forever. If I waited too long, Jessica might succeed in completely separating us, making any future intervention nearly impossible. As I considered my limited options, I reached a difficult but necessary conclusion. I couldn't stop Jessica by playing defense. It was time to implement a counterattack that she would never see coming. The next morning, I called my longtime attorney and friend, Howard Garfield. We had worked together for over 2 decades, and I trusted his judgment implicitly. "Howard, I need your help with a delicate matter," I explained, outlining the situation with Jessica and the evidence Frank had gathered. "I need to protect my son and the company, but directly confronting Jessica could backfire catastrophically." Howard listened carefully, asking pointed questions about the evidence and Jessica's apparent plan. "This is a complex situation, Max," he finally said. "Confronting her directly would indeed be risky without absolute proof that Andrew can't dismiss. What you need is a strategy that protects your assets and your son, regardless of whether he initially believes you or not." "Exactly," I agreed. "I need to restructure things in a way that appears to give Jessica what she wants while actually protecting everything important." Over the next week, Howard and I worked with my financial advisors to implement a brilliant but risky plan. Rather than fighting Jessica's push for accelerated company transfer, I would appear to embrace it but with critical modifications that she wouldn't fully understand until it was too late. First, I restructured the company ownership through a complex series of trusts and holding companies. On paper, it appeared that I was preparing for an accelerated transfer of Westbrook to Andrew. In reality, I was creating a sophisticated network of ethical requirements and performance benchmarks that would need to be satisfied before any real control changed hands. Second, I liquidated several personal investments and made highly visible transfers into accounts that Jessica could easily monitor. The purpose was to create the impression that I was consolidating assets in preparation for retirement. Meanwhile, Howard helped me establish a separate trust fund for Andrew that Jessica couldn't access even if she managed to divorce him and claim half his assets. The most crucial element of our plan involved creating a false narrative about my succession intentions. I began casually mentioning to key employees and business associates that I was considering an accelerated timeline for retirement. "Andrew has really proven himself lately," I told Jack Sullivan, our operations manager, knowing that Jessica had approached him recently. "I'm thinking of moving up the transfer of controlling interest, maybe even within the next few months." I made similar comments to our CFO and several board members, always within earshot of people who might relay the information back to Jessica. The rumor spread quickly throughout the company. The next phase required careful timing. I invited Andrew and Jessica to dinner at my home to discuss the future of the company. "I've been thinking about our conversations," I told them, as we enjoyed dessert on the patio. "You're right, Andrew. Perhaps I have been overly cautious about the transition timeline." Jessica couldn't quite hide her excitement, though she maintained an excellent poker face. "That's wonderful, Max. I know Andrew appreciates your confidence in him." "I've instructed Howard to prepare the necessary documents," I continued. "We'll need to review them together, of course, but my intention is to transfer controlling interest within the next 3 months." Andrew appeared genuinely surprised and pleased. "Dad, I don't know what to say. Thank you for trusting me." "You've earned it, son," I replied sincerely. This company has always been for you. I want to see you take it to the next level while I'm still around to witness your success." Jessica reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "This means so much to both of us, Max. We've been thinking about making some significant life changes, and this timing couldn't be better." "The Colorado move?" I asked innocently. "Among other things," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We've been discussing starting a family soon, too." This was news to me, and from Andrew's momentary expression of surprise, possibly to him as well. Jessica was clearly improvising, adding whatever emotional leverage she could to ensure the transfer proceeded quickly. As they left that evening, I hugged my son tightly. "I love you, Andrew. Everything I do is because I want the best for you. I hope you know that." He returned the embrace warmly. "I know, Dad. I love you too." The following morning, I moved forward with the next phase of our plan. I had Howard call Jessica directly, bypassing Andrew. "Mrs. Westbrook," Howard said when she answered, "Max has asked me to work directly with you on some of the paperwork for the company transfer. He mentioned you have a legal background and might appreciate being involved in the process." This was a calculated move. By appealing to her ego and giving her the impression she had privileged access to the process, we hoped she would reveal more of her intentions. "That's very thoughtful," Jessica replied smoothly. "I'd be happy to review any documents before Andrew sees them, just to make sure everything is clear and straightforward." "Excellent. There are some financial disclosure forms that need to be completed first. Would you be available to meet tomorrow to go over them?" Jessica agreed eagerly, not realizing that every interaction with Howard was being carefully documented as part of our evidence gathering. Meanwhile, I implemented another key element of our strategy. I began moving company funds between accounts in a way that created the appearance of consolidation, but actually established a clear paper trail of all legitimate business operations. If Jessica and Ted Garrison were planning to extract capital immediately after the transfer, they would find it significantly more difficult than anticipated. The twist that changed everything came when Frank's team made a breakthrough discovery. Jessica had been meeting with a document specialist known for creating convincing forgeries. Surveillance photos showed them exchanging what appeared to be signature samples, possibly mine. "We believe she's preparing to forge your signature on documents if necessary," Frank told me during our secure call. "This crosses the line into criminal territory." "Do we have enough evidence now to take to Andrew?" I asked. Frank hesitated. "Almost. We have financial impropriety, clear evidence of her relationship with Garrison, and now potential forgery. But we're still missing the smoking gun that ties it all together, something Andrew couldn't possibly dismiss." That smoking gun arrived unexpectedly the very next day. Jessica made a critical mistake. She used Andrew's laptop to email Ted Garrison but forgot to log out of his email account afterward. A draft email remained open when Andrew returned home early from a business meeting. Andrew called me, his voice shaking. "Dad, I need to see you. Right now. Something's wrong. Very wrong." An hour later, my son sat in my study, face pale and hands trembling slightly as he placed a printed email in front of me. "I found this on my laptop. Jessica must have forgotten to close it." I read the email, addressed to Ted Garrison. Timeline accelerated. Max taking the bait on immediate transfer. Once papers are signed, we'll move quickly on the Colorado relocation. Andrew still doesn't suspect anything about us or the real plan for Westbrook. His father's cognitive decline narrative is working. We can use that as leverage if he resists the asset liquidation after transfer. Remember, we need the first $50,000 immediately for your contact. The rest can follow our original distribution plan once we've stripped and sold the company assets. I looked up at my son, whose eyes were filled with pain and confusion. "Dad, what is this? Who is Ted Garrison? What does she mean about cognitive decline narrative?" The moment I had been both dreading and waiting for had arrived. It was time to tell Andrew everything. "Son, there's something I need to show you," I said quietly, opening my desk drawer to retrieve a flash drive. "I've been investigating Jessica for the past 2 months. What you've discovered is just the tip of the iceberg." Andrew's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Investigating my wife? Dad, what are you talking about?" I connected the drive to my computer and opened a folder containing the evidence Frank had compiled. Surveillance photos of Jessica with Ted Garrison, financial records showing money transfers from Andrew's accounts to hers, recorded phone conversations discussing their plans, background reports revealing Jessica's previous identities and broken engagements to wealthy men. 8 weeks ago, I accidentally overheard Jessica on the phone, I explained as Andrew stared at the monitor in stunned silence. She said she only married you for access to my money. At first, I couldn't believe it, so I hired a private investigator to find out the truth. Andrew's face drained of color as he scrolled through document after document, photo after photo. There was Jessica entering a hotel with Ted Garrison. There she was leaving a bank after transferring funds from Andrew's account. There were the emails discussing how to manipulate Andrew and accelerate the company transfer. "This can't be real," Andrew whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. Deep down, I could see that pieces were falling into place for him, notes that hadn't made sense, inconsistencies in her stories, behavior that had seemed odd, but that he had dismissed. Ted Garrison runs a company that buys family businesses, strips them for parts, and resells them, I explained gently. Jessica has been working with him since before your wedding. Their plan was to gain control of Westbrook through you, liquidate the assets, and disappear with the money. Andrew stood abruptly, pacing the room. But why would she? We were happy. At least I thought we were. His voice broke on the last words. She's a con artist, son. She's done this before, though never at this scale. She targeted you because of your connection to me and the company. Andrew stopped pacing and turned to me, eyes suddenly widening with realization. The cognitive decline story. She's been telling me you're showing signs of memory problems, that you need medical evaluation. She even arranged for a doctor. Dr. Lewis, I confirmed. She's been meeting with him and possibly creating a fraudulent medical scenario to use against me if necessary. Andrew collapsed back into his chair. Oh my God. He looked up at me, eyes filled with pain and growing anger. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me without concrete proof? Jessica has been systematically undermining my credibility with you, painting me as a controlling father unwilling to let go of the company. If I had come to you with suspicions but no evidence, she would have convinced you I was making it up to maintain control. The harsh truth of this statement registered in Andrew's eyes. He nodded slowly. There's more you need to know, I continued. Jessica is in serious debt, nearly $300,000, including $50,000 to someone with criminal connections. That's why she's been pressing so hard for the accelerated timeline. She needs cash quickly. Andrew sat in shocked silence for several minutes, processing everything he had learned. Then he reached for his phone. I should confront her now. This ends today. I placed a gentle hand on his arm. Wait, son. I understand the impulse, but we need to be strategic. Jessica is cunning and now potentially desperate. If we confront her without the right approach, she might destroy evidence or create new problems. What do you suggest? Andrew asked, his voice steadier now, anger replacing shock. We need to let her believe her plan is working while we set up the final piece of evidence. Frank has arranged for surveillance at our meeting with Howard tomorrow. If she incriminates herself there, combined with what we already have, it will be irrefutable. Andrew hesitated, clearly struggling with the idea of facing Jessica knowing what he now knew. I don't know if I can pretend everything is normal. You don't have to interact with her much before tomorrow. Just don't let on that anything has changed. The twist that no one expected came later that evening. Andrew called me, his voice urgent. Dad, you won't believe this. I decided to check our home security system to see if there was anything unusual. We have cameras in the main areas of the house that I installed last year. I just reviewed footage from last week while I was on that business trip to Chicago. What did you find? Jessica brought Ted Garrison into our home. They were together in our bedroom. His voice caught. But that's not the worst part. They were in my home office, going through my files and taking photos of documents. I have it all on video, Dad, clear as day. This was the final piece of evidence we needed, clearer and more damning than anything we could have arranged. Can you save that footage securely? Send a copy to Frank immediately. Already done, Andrew confirmed. I'm coming over. I can't stay in this house tonight knowing what I know now. Andrew arrived 30 minutes later, looking exhausted but more resolved than broken. We stayed up late into the night, reviewing the evidence and planning our approach for the meeting with Jessica and Howard the following day. I still can't believe I didn't see it, Andrew said quietly as we sat in my study. There were signs, comments that didn't quite add up. The way she always steered conversations toward the company finances. How she slowly isolated me from my friends. Don't blame yourself, I told him. Con artists like Jessica are experts at manipulation. They know exactly how to earn trust and exploit it. "She never loved me," he stated flatly. "Not for one day." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "No, son, she didn't. But that's a reflection of her character, not yours. You are worthy of real love from someone who values you for who you are, not what you possess." The next morning, we met with Frank to finalize our strategy. Howard had arranged for Jessica to come to his office at 11 to review the transfer documents before Andrew and I arrived. What Jessica didn't know was that we would be watching from an adjacent room with a one-way mirror, commonly used for client consultations. "Let her incriminate herself," Frank advised. "Howard will ask leading questions about her intentions for the company after the transfer. Once we have that on record, combined with everything else, we'll have an airtight case." When we arrived at Howard's office, Jessica was already there, elegantly dressed and projecting confidence as she reviewed the documents Howard had prepared. From our observation position, we could see and hear everything. "These transfer documents seem straightforward," Jessica was saying, "but I'm concerned about these clauses regarding operational control. It appears Max would retain some oversight of major financial decisions even after transferring ownership." Howard nodded professionally. "That's standard in transitions of this magnitude. It protects the company during the adjustment period." Jessica's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. "That won't work for our timeline. We need complete control, particularly over capital allocation and asset management. Is there any way to modify these provisions?" "When you say our timeline, what exactly are you referring to?" Howard asked innocently. Jessica hesitated briefly, then replied, "Andrew and I have significant investment opportunities waiting. The Colorado relocation also requires substantial capital. Any restrictions on our ability to leverage company assets would be problematic." "Leverage in what way? Are you planning to use company assets as loan collateral?" "Among other things," Jessica said carefully. "We may need to restructure some company holdings, possibly sell certain divisions to free up operating capital." Howard made notes. "That's helpful context. And these plans are Andrew's vision for the company's future?" A flash of irritation crossed Jessica's face. "Andrew and I make decisions together. He understands the importance of being agile with assets in today's market." "Of course," Howard replied smoothly. "And what timeline are you envisioning for these, restructuring activities?" "Immediately after the transfer is complete, within 30 days at most." Howard nodded, making another note. "And just to clarify for our documentation, who besides you and Andrew is involved in these plans? Any external advisors or potential buyers already lined up?" Jessica's expression grew guarded. "That's confidential at this stage. But yes, we have interested parties prepared to move quickly." At this point, Andrew couldn't contain himself any longer. He stood up and entered Howard's office, with me following close behind. Jessica's expression shifted from surprise to calculated warmth. "Andrew, Max, I thought you weren't coming until noon. Howard and I were just reviewing some details." "Yes, we heard," Andrew said coldly. "We heard everything, Jessica. Or should I call you Jessica Alden? That is your real name, isn't it?" The color drained from Jessica's face. "What are you talking about?" Andrew placed a folder on the table between them. "Your previous identities, your past engagements to wealthy men, your relationship with Ted Garrison, the money you've stolen from my accounts. It's all here." Jessica's composure cracked momentarily before she rallied. "These are ridiculous accusations. Andrew, your father has been trying to maintain control over you and the company. Now he's making up outrageous stories to drive us apart." "That might have worked yesterday," Andrew replied, his voice steady despite the pain evident in his eyes. "But I saw the security footage, Jessica. Ted Garrison in our home, in our bedroom, the two of you stealing documents from my office. There's nothing you can say to explain that away." Jessica's facade finally shattered. Her eyes darted between us, calculating her options. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," she finally said, her voice taking on a pleading quality. "The debts weren't my fault. Ted promised he could help, but he needed information about Westbrook's assets. It started small, but then—" "Save it for your lawyer," Andrew cut in. "We have everything on record, including your plans to fabricate a story about my father's mental health and your intentions to strip and sell company assets." At that moment, Jessica's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then back at us, her expression changing from calculated desperation to genuine fear. "I need to take this," she said quietly. "Put it on speaker," Andrew demanded. Surprisingly, she complied, perhaps hoping for some way out of her situation. "Jessica Westbrook," she answered, forcing confidence into her voice. "Mrs. Westbrook, this is Thomas Reynolds from First National Bank. I'm calling about the transfer requests you've submitted for your husband's accounts. I need to inform you that those requests have been flagged as potentially fraudulent and have been denied. Furthermore, after reviewing the transaction history, we've identified numerous unauthorized transfers dating back several months. The bank has frozen all associated accounts pending investigation. We've also contacted the appropriate authorities regarding potential financial fraud charges." The banker's clinical, professional voice echoed in the suddenly silent room. Jessica's face lost every trace of color as the full implications registered. There must be some mistake," she stammered. "My husband authorized those transfers." "No, I didn't," Andrew said clearly, loud enough for the banker to hear. "And I'll be providing a full statement to that effect." Jessica ended the call and stood up abruptly. "This isn't over. You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually, we do," I replied calmly. "Theodore Garrison has been under investigation by the FBI for securities fraud and corporate espionage for months. Frank Delaney, my investigator, has already forwarded all our evidence to the appropriate authorities. They're likely speaking with Mr. Garrison as we sit here." This final revelation seemed to break something in Jessica. She sank back into her chair, the calculated mask completely gone. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now," Andrew said, placing a document in front of her, "you sign these divorce papers. They're generous considering the circumstances. No charges filed if you agree to a complete separation with no claims on my assets or the company. You walk away with the clothes on your back and nothing more." Jessica stared at the papers, then at the three men watching her. With a hand that trembled slightly, she picked up a pen and signed her name. As she stood to leave, she turned to Andrew one last time. For what it's worth, it wasn't all an act, not at the beginning. Andrew's expression remained impassive. "Goodbye, Jessica." After she left, the three of us sat in silence for a moment. Then Andrew turned to me, eyes shining with unshed tears and profound gratitude. "Dad," he said simply, "thank you for saving me from making the biggest mistake of my life." I embraced my son, my own emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "That's what fathers do, Andrew. We protect what matters most." In the weeks that followed, our lives underwent a profound transformation. The divorce proceedings moved forward swiftly, with Jessica offering no resistance to the terms. Whether motivated by fear of criminal charges or simply recognizing she had been outmaneuvered, she accepted the settlement that left her with nothing from her nearly 2-year marriage to Andrew. The financial fallout was substantial but manageable. We discovered that Jessica had accumulated nearly $80,000 in unauthorized transfers from Andrew's personal accounts. With the bank's cooperation and the clear evidence of fraud, most of this was flagged as fraudulent activity and recovered. The credit cards she had opened in Andrew's name were more complicated, but with legal assistance, we were able to resolve most of those debts as well. Ted Garrison faced more severe consequences. The FBI investigation, bolstered by the evidence Frank had gathered, resulted in multiple charges including conspiracy to commit wire fraud, corporate espionage, and securities violations. His company collapsed as clients fled, unwilling to be associated with such toxic business practices. The last I heard, he was negotiating a plea deal that would still result in substantial prison time. As for Dr. Lewis, the neurologist Jessica had been working with, the medical board launched an ethics investigation after we forwarded evidence of his potential involvement in fabricating medical records. His practice was suspended pending the outcome. The most important healing, however, happened within our family. Andrew initially struggled with profound feelings of betrayal and self-doubt. How could he have been so thoroughly deceived? What had he missed? These questions tormented him in the early days after Jessica's departure. "I feel like such a fool," he confessed during one of our evening conversations a month after the confrontation. Looking back, the signs were all there. The inconsistencies in her stories, the way she isolated me from friends, her excessive interest in the company finances. "Son, don't be too hard on yourself," I told him. Jessica was a professional con artist. She knew exactly how to manipulate emotions and create a false reality. She's done this before, though never at this scale. "But you saw through her," Andrew pointed out. "Only because I accidentally overheard that phone call. Without that moment of revelation, I might have remained in the dark as well. Over time, Andrew began to rebuild his confidence and trust in his own judgment. He threw himself into work, finding healing in the familiar rhythms of the company and the supportive community of our employees. Many of them had sensed something off about Jessica, but, like me, had been reluctant to voice concerns without concrete evidence. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, we revisited the company's succession plan with a clearer perspective. The accelerated timeline Jessica had pushed for was abandoned in favor of our original, more measured approach. Andrew would gradually assume more responsibility, with complete transfer of ownership scheduled for my 70th birthday as originally planned. "I appreciate the wisdom in your approach now," Andrew told me as we finalized the details with Howard. "There's so much about running this company that I'm still learning. The patient transition makes more sense than a sudden handover." "You'll be more than ready when the time comes," I assured him. "You already understand the technical side better than I ever did. The client relationships and strategic planning will come with time and experience." Our personal relationship deepened as well. The crisis with Jessica had reminded us both of what truly mattered. We instituted weekly dinners, just the two of us, where business talk was prohibited. Instead, we reconnected as father and son, sharing memories of Sarah, discussing books we'd read, debating politics and philosophy, or simply enjoying comfortable silence in each other's company. "Dad," Andrew said during one such dinner, about a year after everything had happened, "I never properly thanked you for what you did. You saved not just the company but me." If Jessica and Garrison had succeeded, but they didn't, I reminded him gently. And the experience, painful as it was, taught us both valuable lessons. Andrew nodded thoughtfully. "Trust but verify. Look beyond the surface. Value integrity over charm." Exactly. In business and in life. The most unexpected development came 18 months after the divorce, when Andrew mentioned he had met someone. "Her name is Laura," he told me, trying but failing to sound casual. "She's an environmental engineer. We met at the Henderson client site where she was consulting on their water reclamation project." I smiled at the careful way he presented this information, clearly wanting my opinion but not wanting to seem too eager for it. "She sounds interesting," I replied. "Will I get to meet her?" "Actually, I invited her to dinner on Sunday, if that works for you." Laura turned out to be everything. Jessica was not genuine, unpretentious, passionate about her work, and completely uninterested in Andrew's financial status. In fact, she didn't realize he was the heir to a successful company until their third date, when he finally mentioned his last name and connection to Westbrook Industrial Solutions. "I thought he was just another engineer on the project," she told me with a laugh when I eventually asked about their first meeting. "He was so knowledgeable about the technical aspects and never mentioned being the owner's son. I actually corrected him on a calculation, which must have been mortifying in retrospect. Probably why he was impressed," I suggested. "Andrew values competence and honesty above all else." Their relationship progressed naturally, without the whirlwind intensity that had characterized his courtship with Jessica. They dated for nearly 2 years before Andrew proposed, and this time, I saw the genuine joy in my son's eyes that had been missing before, though I hadn't recognized the absence until seeing the real thing. The wedding was smaller and more intimate than the first lavish affair. Held in the botanical gardens where Sarah had loved to spend time, it felt like coming full circle. Laura's parents, warm and unpretentious people from Wisconsin, blended seamlessly with our friends and colleagues. There was no performance to it, no calculated display, just authentic celebration. During the reception, as I watched Andrew and Laura dance, completely absorbed in each other and oblivious to everyone around them, I felt Sarah's presence more strongly than I had in years. She would have loved Laura and would have been so proud of the man our son had become, especially after weathering such a difficult trial. 3 years after the Jessica incident, as we now referred to it, Westbrook Industrial Solutions was stronger than ever. Andrew had successfully launched the Western expansion that had once been Jessica's pretense for moving to Colorado. Under his leadership, we had acquired 2 smaller competitors and developed a new line of environmentally sustainable industrial processes that were generating significant interest across the industry. On my 69th birthday, 1 year before the scheduled complete transfer of ownership, Andrew and Laura announced they were expecting their first child. The joy of knowing I would be a grandfather gave me a renewed sense of purpose. The legacy I had built would continue not just through the company, but through this new life. As I reflect now on the entire experience, I'm struck by how close we came to losing everything. Jessica's plan was sophisticated and nearly succeeded. Had I not accidentally overheard that phone call, had Frank not been so thorough in his investigation, had Andrew not found that email draft on his computer, the outcome might have been catastrophically different. Yet from that potential disaster came unexpected blessings. My relationship with my son deepened. Andrew found genuine love with Laura. Our business grew stronger with clearer succession planning and better security measures. And perhaps most importantly, we both gained wisdom that no business school could teach. I learned that protecting those we love sometimes requires difficult choices and careful strategy rather than direct confrontation. Andrew learned that true character reveals itself over time and through challenges, not through charming words or superficial gestures. Together, we discovered that even the most painful betrayals can ultimately lead to growth and renewed appreciation for what matters most. As I prepare to officially hand the company reins to Andrew next year, I do so with complete confidence in his judgment and abilities. The crucible of betrayal refined rather than destroyed him, revealing a strength of character that makes me prouder than any business success ever could. Life offers no guarantees. We cannot always prevent deception or protect ourselves from those who would take advantage. But we can choose how we respond to betrayal, whether we allow it to embitter us or use it as a catalyst for growth. Andrew and I chose the latter path, and that has made all the difference. So what would I ask you, after sharing this deeply personal story? Have you ever faced a situation where direct confrontation would have made things worse? Where patience and strategy ultimately proved more effective than immediate action? How did you handle betrayal in your own life? Did it make you stronger, or did it leave lasting scars? If you found value in our story, please like this video and subscribe to hear more experiences that might help you navigate life's complex challenges. Share with someone who might be facing a difficult situation where wisdom and patience could make all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you clarity and discernment in all your important relationships.